ang Mindanao Railway Project para sa 2026.
Before a single train has carried its first passenger across Mindanao, the railway has already become one of the most talked about infrastructure projects in Philippine history. For decades, people have imagined a future where the country's second-largest island is connected not by long, exhausting road trips, but by fast, reliable trains cutting through mountains, cities, and fertile plains. It is a vision that promises to reshape commerce, tourism, and everyday life for millions of Filipinos. Yet despite the excitement, the project has also become a story of political promises, shifting priorities, international partnerships, and years of uncertainty. Today, we're exploring the incredible story of the Mindanao Railway, why it matters, why it has faced so many obstacles, and whether the dream of a railway connecting the island is finally becoming reality. Mindanao is unlike any other island in the Philippines. Covering nearly 100,000 square kilometers, it is home to more than 25 million people and serves as one of the country's most important agricultural and economic regions. Vast plantations produce bananas, pineapples, coconuts, cacao, and coffee that are shipped across the Philippines and exported around the world. Bustling cities like Davao, Cagayan de Oro, General Santos, and Zamboanga act as commercial hubs, while hundreds of smaller municipalities depend heavily on road transportation to move both people and goods. Despite its economic importance, transportation has long remained one of Mindanao's biggest challenges. Most travel depends on highways that stretch across rugged terrain, winding mountain roads, and densely populated urban centers. Trucks carrying agricultural products often spend hours stuck in traffic, while commuters endure lengthy bus rides between cities. During severe weather or road accidents, transportation can slow to a crawl, disrupting businesses and affecting thousands of livelihoods. Unlike Luzon, which has an expanding railway network centered around Metro Manila, or even parts of the Visayas that have seen various transport upgrades, Mindanao has never had a modern railway system. In fact, the island has waited for more than a century for trains that never came. The idea of building railways in Mindanao dates back to the early 20th century, during the American colonial period. Government planners recognized the island's enormous agricultural potential and understood that rail transport could accelerate economic development. Surveys were conducted, proposals were drafted, and discussions began about connecting major settlements through rail lines. But those ambitious plans never moved beyond paper. Over the decades, successive governments revisited the concept time and time again. Feasibility studies were commissioned. Consultants examined possible routes. Politicians announced new commitments, only for funding shortages, changing administrations, or competing national priorities to push the railway back into obscurity. Meanwhile, roads became the default solution. Highways expanded, buses multiplied, and freight trucks dominated the transportation landscape. While these investments helped support growth, they also created increasing dependence on road infrastructure that struggled to keep pace with Mindanao's rapidly growing population and economy. By the early 2000s, the conversation surrounding railways returned with renewed urgency. The island's major cities were expanding faster than ever before. Davao City was becoming one of the country's leading economic centers. Population growth placed enormous pressure on existing transport systems, and businesses increasingly called for infrastructure capable of supporting larger volumes of cargo while reducing travel times. Government planners began looking beyond immediate road improvements. They envisioned a transportation network that could fundamentally transform how Mindanao functioned. not just by making travel faster, but by linking industries, ports, airports, and communities into one integrated economic corridor. Instead of isolated cities competing independently, a railway could encourage regional cooperation. Farmers could transport fresh produce more efficiently to processing facilities and ports. Manufacturers could reduce logistics costs. Students could access universities more easily. Tourists could explore multiple destinations without spending entire days on buses. Investors, seeing improved connectivity, might become more willing to establish businesses outside already crowded urban centers. The railway was no longer viewed simply as another transportation project. It was increasingly seen as a catalyst for regional development, capable of narrowing economic gaps between provinces while encouraging new industries to emerge. Everything changed in 2016. The Philippine government launched one of the country's most ambitious infrastructure programs ever undertaken. Massive investments flowed into roads, bridges, airports, flood control systems, and public transportation under the Build initiative. For the first time in generations, the Mindanao Railway became one of the government's flagship infrastructure projects. The announcement generated enormous excitement across the island. After decades of studies and unfulfilled promises, many believed construction would finally begin. Officials described an ambitious network that would eventually span more than 1,500 kilometers, making it one of the largest railway systems ever envisioned in Southeast Asia. Rather than attempting the entire network at once, planners proposed constructing the railway in phases. The first segment would focus on the Davao region, creating the foundation for future expansion across the island. If successful, later phases would extend northward toward Cagayan de Oro, westward toward Zamboanga, and eventually connect numerous provinces that had never before been linked by rail. For millions of Mindanao residents, it sounded like the beginning of a new era. But turning a century-old dream into reality would prove far more complicated than anyone expected. The first phase of the Mindanao Railway was designed to do far more than simply introduce trains to the island. It was intended to prove that rail transportation could finally work in a region that had relied almost entirely on highways for generations. If this initial section succeeded, it would pave the way for one of the most ambitious transportation networks the Philippines had ever attempted. Known as Phase 1 or the Tagum-Davao-Digos line, the route was planned to stretch for roughly 100 kilometers through the heart of the Davao region. Instead of focusing on a single city, it would connect three major urban centers: Tagum City in Davao del Norte, Davao City, and Digos City in Davao del Sur. Together, these areas are home to millions of people and serve as vital centers for trade, education, healthcare, and industry. This first phase of the Mindanao Railway was previously estimated to cost around 81.6 billion pesos, but that figure is expected to rise as the project undergoes a revised feasibility study. As of 2026, there is no official completion date, with the Philippine government still searching for funding and updating the project's design before construction can begin. Every day, thousands of commuters travel between these cities by bus, private vehicle, or motorcycle. During rush hour, highways become heavily congested, and trips that should take less than an hour can stretch far longer. Freight trucks carrying agricultural products compete for road space alongside commuters, making traffic an unavoidable part of daily life. The railway aimed to change that completely. Passenger trains would travel at speeds significantly faster than road traffic, dramatically reducing travel times between cities. A journey that often required hours by road during peak congestion could be completed in a fraction of the time. For workers, students, and families, that would mean less time spent in traffic and more time at home, in school, or at work. But the benefits extended well beyond passengers. Mindanao's economy depends heavily on agriculture. The island produces a substantial share of the Philippines' export crops, including bananas, pineapples, coconuts, cacao, and other high-value products. These goods must be transported quickly from farms to processing facilities, ports, and domestic markets. Delays on crowded highways can increase costs and reduce efficiency, particularly for perishable products. A modern railway could transform this supply chain. Freight could move in larger quantities with greater reliability, allowing businesses to lower transportation costs while improving delivery schedules. This efficiency could make Mindanao's exports even more competitive in international markets, strengthening one of the island's most important economic sectors. Urban planners also saw another advantage. Railways often reshape the cities they serve. Around stations, new commercial districts frequently emerge. Residential developments follow. Retail businesses expand. Hotels, restaurants, offices, and public services begin clustering near transit hubs because accessibility attracts investment. The Mindanao Railway was expected to encourage exactly this type of development. Instead of concentrating growth in already crowded city centers, new business districts could emerge along the railway corridor. Smaller communities that had previously remained isolated might suddenly become attractive locations for investors, creating jobs and reducing pressure on larger cities. Environmental considerations also played an important role. The Mindanao Railway is designed as a modern, international standard rail system using standard gauge tracks and advanced safety technology. It aims to reduce traffic congestion, lower emissions, improve air quality, and support both passenger and freight transport, creating a more efficient, sustainable, and expandable transportation network for the future. Funding, however, remained one of the biggest questions. Large-scale railway projects require enormous financial investments. Building tracks is only one part of the equation. Governments must also acquire land, construct stations, build bridges and tunnels where necessary, purchase rolling stock, install signaling systems, establish maintenance facilities, and train personnel to operate the network safely. That might need to be acquired, and evaluated the technical challenges of constructing a railway through both urban and rural landscapes. These preparations represented significant progress compared to earlier decades, when many proposals had stalled before reaching such advanced planning stages. Public interest also grew rapidly. Residents living along the proposed route followed announcements closely, eager to learn whether stations would be built near their communities. Business leaders discussed the economic opportunities that improved transportation could create. Local governments began considering how future development plans might align with the railway corridor. For many people, the project had become more than another government announcement. It represented hope that Mindanao would finally receive the kind of modern transportation infrastructure that had long been concentrated elsewhere in the country. Yet beneath the optimism, serious challenges were beginning to emerge. Securing billions of dollars in financing proved more complicated than anticipated. Negotiations moved slowly. Rising construction costs placed additional pressure on budgets. Questions about procurement, implementation timelines, and changing economic conditions created increasing uncertainty. Then, just as momentum appeared to be building, a series of unexpected events threatened to derail the project once again. Just as the Mindanao Railway seemed ready to move from planning to construction, momentum began to fade. One of the biggest hurdles was financing. The Philippine government had expected a significant portion of the project's funding to come through official development assistance from China. However, negotiations stretched on without producing the agreements needed to begin full-scale construction. As months turned into years, uncertainty grew over whether the loans would ever materialize. Then came another major setback. The COVID-19 pandemic disrupted economies around the world, forcing governments to redirect resources toward healthcare, emergency assistance, and economic recovery. Large infrastructure projects faced delays as travel restrictions slowed engineering work, supply chains were disrupted, and public spending priorities shifted. The Mindanao Railway was no exception. Although planning activities continued, visible progress remained limited, leading many Filipinos to wonder whether the long-awaited railway would once again become another unfinished promise. A turning point came when the Philippine government decided to pursue a different strategy. Rather than depending on a single source of financing, officials announced they would seek alternative funding partners and explore other ways to move the project forward. The railway remained part of the country's long-term infrastructure vision, but the approach had changed. Government agencies also emphasized that preparations such as detailed engineering, right-of-way acquisition, and environmental compliance would continue, so the project could advance more quickly once financing was secured. Despite the delays, the demand for the railway has never disappeared. Traffic continues to increase across the Davao region. Businesses still need faster logistics, and millions of residents continue to hope for a modern transportation system that can support Mindanao's growing economy. The dream has survived changing administrations, financial challenges, and even a global pandemic. The question now is no longer whether Mindanao needs a railway. It is whether the country can finally turn more than a century of planning into steel tracks, moving trains, and a transportation network worthy of the island's enormous potential. Today, the Mindanao Railway remains one of the Philippines' most anticipated infrastructure projects. While construction has yet to begin on the scale originally envisioned, the project is far from abandoned. Government officials continue to express their commitment to finding new sources of funding and refining the implementation plan. If completed, the railway could become a defining piece of infrastructure that shapes Mindanao's future for generations. Its impact would extend far beyond faster travel. A functioning railway could strengthen regional trade, encourage new investments, create thousands of jobs during construction and operation, and improve access to education, healthcare, and business opportunities. It could also reduce pressure on highways, lower transportation costs, and help build a more connected and resilient economy across the island. Of course, significant challenges remain. Securing financing, completing land acquisition, managing environmental concerns, and ensuring long-term operational sustainability will all require careful planning and consistent political support. Large infrastructure projects rarely move forward without obstacles, but history has shown that persistence often determines whether ambitious visions become reality. For the people of Mindanao, the railway represents more than steel rails and train stations. It symbolizes decades of hope for equal development and modern infrastructure that can unlock the island's full economic potential. After more than a century of proposals, delays, and renewed commitments, many believe the opportunity is still within reach. Whether the first train begins operating in the next few years or further into the future, one thing is certain. The success of the Mindanao Railway could redefine how millions of Filipinos live, work, and travel, transforming one of the nation's most important regions into an even stronger engine of growth. And perhaps that's why this project continues to capture so much attention. It's not simply about building a railway, it's about building connections, creating opportunities, and fulfilling a promise that has waited for more than 100 years. If that promise is finally realized, the Mindanao Railway won't just change the map of the Philippines. It will change the future of Mindanao itself. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the Philippines' most ambitious infrastructure projects, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Until next time, thanks for watching.